Risk is directed by Mel Gibson and is about a U.S. Marshal escorting a witness to a high-profile trial. But when the pilot is revealed to be a hitman, the simple flight turns into complete chaos. I was excited for this movie for one simple reason. It's not because it was directed by Mel Gibson, who is a great director, if nothing else. It's not because it's a contained thriller, which can be one of the best subgenres in film. It is because of this. When I saw this in the trailer for this film, I laughed harder than I've laughed at any film in a long time. Look at it! I was not expecting this movie to be good in the slightest, but I was at the bare minimum expecting it to be a kind of so bad that it's good. So balls to the wall that you can't help but laugh at it. I hate to say it, but this movie really could have benefited from some balls to the wall insanity, because as it is, meh. Alright, so before we get into all of that, what is legitimately good in the movie? Well, for starters, the runtime. This movie is only 90 minutes and it definitely feels like that. This movie definitely benefits from a very condensed runtime. It never really feels like the movie drags at any point, and I really do have to appreciate that. I also will give credit where credit is due. Some of the flight sequences are very tense, especially as the movie goes on and the flight becomes more and more chaotic. Those moments of turbulent tension are really well handled. Alright, anything else great in the movie? Michelle Dockery is okay as the U.S. Marshal. She's not great, but she's passable. Everything else, nah. This movie's biggest problem can be narrowed down very much to its structure. Even though this is a very condensed movie, that can often work in its downfall. There are a lot of moments, especially in the first third of this movie, that feel way too rushed and way too overly edited. The overall setup for this film takes about 3 minutes, and you constantly feel like you're getting whiplashed with every single shot change. That overly edited style really doesn't help in the action sequences either, but also because there's not a lot of great choreography that you can show off in such a small location, they constantly have to edit back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And a lot of the times when there are action sequences going on in the plane as the plane is overall crashing or going through turbulence, that's where it's really nauseating. Along with that, you have Topher Grace as the main witness of this film, and he's also the main comic relief. I could not stand him. I got annoyed with him in the first minute of screen time with him, and he is in the entire film with that annoying delivery and those awful jokes. It actually got to the point where I was rooting for the hitman half of the time. And speaking of the hitman, let's talk about Mark Wahlberg in this movie. Because, I can't lie, on the one hand, he does bring all of the classic Mark Wahlberg charm to this performance. But on the other hand, from an acting perspective, this might be one of his most insane performances yet. He is constantly portrayed as the most sadistic person alive in this film, and yet at the same time, he's constantly giving all of his classic Mark Wahlberg inflections. The same kind of awkward inflections that he used in The Happening are also used in this film as he's constantly threatening our main characters. It's such a bizarre acting choice on top of a whole bunch of bizarre choices when it comes to this character. Especially when it comes to the character's overall insanity, it's actually very bland. There's some sort of backstory that you can get a gleam from with this character, but overall, he's kind of just vaguely insane for the sake of just being vaguely insane. You add those two factors with that hilarious bald cap and the fact that he's constantly mugging throughout this entire film, and you have hands down the most entertaining part of this movie, even though it's not very good. And on top of all of that, you have some surprisingly awful effects and some really bad ADR work. This movie constantly has the overall vibe of an amateur film. Like someone who's just starting off in their filmmaking journey and doesn't have the best grasp on pacing, cinematography, or writing. But again, this is being directed by an Oscar-nominated director. There is no excuse for how sloppy this film is. Is the film entertainingly insane at times? Yeah, sure, but overall, it plays it so annoyingly safe. If this movie just went balls to the wall with all of its choices, I really would have respected it. But as it is, it's kind of forgettable. Except this. This I will never forget. I'm gonna give Flight Risk a D+. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the best, and don't forget to click subscribe and click the bell icon down below to stay up to date on all things movie, all things TV, all things nerd.